Hey guys, have you ever wanted to take a Black History or Black Studies course and haven't been able to, or you took one years ago and well, listen. Today's 10-minute workshop is about this fine gentleman here by the name of Carter G. Woodson. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading a chapter a night, and I'm going to make it available on YouTube for you all to listen to. Okay, but before we do that, before I get to reading this, I want you all to know the man behind this book, The Miseducation of the Negro. So, today, before we even dive into that book, I want to situate us historically. So what does that mean? I want you to know that this is not just a book. Okay, this is a weapon. Why do I say it's a weapon? It's a weapon because he wrote it in 1933, right? But its analysis still cuts deep even today in today's realities for Black life. Okay, so to understand why, we first need to understand who Woodson was, what shaped him, and the intellectual traditions that he thought of and belonged to. So, early life, from enslavement to education. Carter G. Woodson was born December 19th, 1875, okay, in Buckingham County, Virginia. So, being born in the Deep South, he done saw some stuff, right? It was just a decade after the emancipation, because emancipation was 1865. His parents, James and Annie Eliza Woodson, were formerly enslaved, working as sharecroppers. What defined his childhood? Poverty. Okay? Woodson labored in coal mines and fields, often missing school to support his family. He missed so much school he didn't begin high school until he was 20 years old. Y'all hear what I'm saying? He didn't begin high school until he was 20. Yet, in just 2 years, this is how smart he was. In 2 years, he completed the entire curriculum, showing both his brilliance and his hunger for knowledge. Now, let's pause right there. Hopefully you all have your young people listening to me too. Youngins, listen to Auntie Angela, all right? This man wanted an education so bad, he didn't let his pride stop him. He was 20 years old going to school. And it is not like school today. This is in the by the time he went to high school, it was probably the late 1800s, or early 1900s. But still, you all are in school now. You have every opportunity to excel and to grow. Don't waste your time not doing your homework, not doing what you're supposed to do. Focus in. Okay, I know the whole world seems like it's going crazy right now, but trust me, we've seen craziness before. The world has a way of resetting itself, okay? We just want you to be in position so that when the world does reset, you have the education, knowledge, skills, and abilities to move forward. All right? Now, let's jump back into it. So, Woodson's delayed entry into formal education gave him an outsider's perspective. Why do I say that? It's because unlike the elites who had been trained early, like some of the elite, Woodson always understood how systems of learning excluded poor and Black people. And sometimes you notice, if you have not experienced sometimes poverty or lack or real world situations, then you can't be empathetic or sympathetic to those who can. Not always. But the prime example, and I hate the political sides, the prime example is this is with the president we have today. He never had to struggle for anything. That's why it's so hard for him to understand and sympathize with the common man, or even to be able to relate, because he couldn't. But with someone like a Carter G. Woodson, who grew up with that type of poverty and lack, as well as have not been able to go to school in his earlier formative years, then he understood. So let's talk about his academic journey. He earned a bachelor's and a master's degree at the University of Chicago. He studied abroad at the Sorbonne in Paris, where he saw how Europeans studied world history, contrasting with America's exclusion of African people from civilization. And you hear that so many times if you read and study of so many Blacks, particularly not only during the late 1800s, 1900s, even during the Harlem Renaissance and during those times where Black Americans who would travel to Europe saw a contrast, a exact dichotomy between how the Europeans viewed Blacks and how Americans did here. And that is what he acknowledged. He saw that Americans would exclude Blacks out of history. However, in America, but how when he was in Europe, it was totally different. In 1912, he became the second Black man to receive a PhD from Harvard. After, of course, W.E.B. Du Bois was the first one. So his dissertation focused on Black education in the United States. Now, this is a critical note, and I want you to understand this. Even at Harvard, Woodson felt alienated Why? Because he saw how mainstream academia dismissed black scholarship as irrelevant. The, quote, outsider within status shaped his conviction that black people must build their own institutions of knowledge. So, since he's an institution builder, let's talk about it. In 1915, he co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, today known as the ASALH, okay? In 1916, he launched the Journal of Negro History, one of the first scholarly journals dedicated to African American studies. And in 1926, he created Negro History Week, which later became what? Black History Month, all right? So let's talk about this real quick. Woodson was not just a writer. You got to remember, he was a movement builder. You all, he saw the problems. He understood that without institutional structures like journals, schools, holidays, black knowledge would be erased. And that is why it's vitally important today that I don't let it be erased. You don't let it be erased. That's why it really sends me to the moon when I get even some black people, but definitely white folk, talking about, why are you always talking about slavery? Why are you always talking about the past? Because the past is, why do you talk about your family members who died, y'all? If I can't talk about the past of what my people have gone through, why do you worry about what happened with the Confederate flag? Why are you so pissed off when we getting rid of the statues? It's just the past. Get over it. So let's talk about this amazing book, The Miseducation of the Negro. It was published during the Jim Crow era when segregation, disenfranchisement, and racial violence was a daily reality for black Americans. Carter G. Woodson argued that the education system was designed to indoctrinate, not liberate, okay? So this is a quote from Woodson. He said, if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. Ooh, that's powerful. That's something I can preach about. I'm going to reiterate that again. If you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. And so his thesis was black people had been educated out of their history, their identity, and their potential. Instead of producing leaders, the system produced dependents. Not only did the white educational system do that, but so did the white man's religion. Both. So, let's talk about some major themes. Let me see, where are we? Okay, I'm going to try to, I don't want to rush it, but let's get it in here. Eurocentrism, or ethnocentricity in curriculum. First things is that black Americans, black students were taught that Europe was the center of civilization while Africa really was. Secondly, the psychological control. The miseducation created inferiority complexes, making black people accept second-class citizenship. Another caveat, economic disempowerment. Education trained black people to work for others and not build independent businesses or institutions. And last, a leadership crisis. Carter G. Woodson saw that black elites often mirrored white society instead of serving their communities. So why is this still important, you all? Because today's debate about banned books, the teaching of slavery, and the erasure of black history are direct echoes of what Woodson warned us about. The miseducation is alive. The whole miseducation he's talking about is that we were taught to not know our rights as far as who we are as human beings, that we are intelligent, and that we are not here to just work for others, but to have our own. So it was the miseducation of the Negro that he's trying to re-educate. And that's what you all are going to learn when you see this in this book. And again, y'all remember it was written in 1933, but the themes still live and are alive today. And that's what we're going to talk about. So again, I will come on and let you all know when I upload the first chapter to YouTube so you all can listen in, okay? Thank you all for your support. Someone did ask me if I have a Cash App. My Cash App got jacked up. It was all in that whole lawsuit thing everybody else got mixed up in. So I don't even have Cash App anymore, but I do have my Venmo if you look underneath the description there. And I also have a Buy Me a Coffee. So thank you all again for your support. Hope you're learning something. And hey, let's continue to get re-educated from the miseducation. Be blessed. Bye.